Welcome to the Leader More podcast. Our motive is to pass on what we've found helpful over the years through leading teams, running operations, and dealing with life's challenges. We hope you enjoy.
Scotty, how's things?
Yep, great. How are things with you?
Good.
Perfect. What's on the agenda today?
Talking improving performance.
Yeah.
So for instance, if you've got a group of, set the scenario, you've got a group of 10 people and their goal, they've got to walk 5 kilometers together. They set off for the first kilometer. They get to the point at the end of that first kilometer and you see how fast they've been moving. So they've been moving at, let's say, 14 minutes per kilometer. Okay, really slow, just a dawdle. Okay,
Disgusting.
no good. Then you say, just casually to the group, so, oh, we're actually moving quite slow. We're at 14 minutes per kilometer. That's actually really not good. You track the next kilometer and miraculously it's at 12-minute kilometers. Then you stop the group and you go, okay, I've been tracking, we've gone 14 for the first one. For the second one, we did 12. I mentioned that we'd been walking slow at 14 and now we're at 12. What I want to do now is I want to set a benchmark is that we need to hit this next kilometer within 10-minute kilometers. That's what I want. Group takes off and they reach the 10. They actually get to 9. Then you break the group up into 2 groups, 5 on each, and you let one group go to create some competition. Let them go for 100 meters and then let the next group go. All of a sudden, you've got a group of 10 people power walking and getting to, nearly a slow jog, essentially. So like with the brain and why as humans, like what is that? Why do we do that?
Are you talking about competition here? Because this sounds like to me is that you've created an environment towards the end where there's a competition and then people are just striving to be better than each other, right?
Yeah, I'd say competition, but then creating the environment that competition can exist and people can focus more on improving than just dawdling through.
So the first part of your experiment, let's call it that loosely, there is something that goes on here, which is you've indicated to your cohort that they're being watched and that you're timing them. So then something comes in called the Hawthorne effect, which is, well, we're being...
Professor Hawthorne?
No, actually. I think it was because there was a workshop somewhere in Hawthorne in the US where the study was conducted. Yeah. But the point being is, if people know they're being observed, they're always going to increase their performance. It's some sort of spectacle, like they're under the spotlight, so all of a sudden they start doing better. So that's what you've done in the first part of this experiment, is that you've let them know, hey, I've noticed we're doing 14. They know they're under the spotlight. All of a sudden they're doing 12. The next part where you engage them in a challenge and you go, well, hey, let's do 12 to 10. This sounds a little bit more like, a little bit of competition. And that's even before you split the teams and do real competition, because now you can call it they're competing against themselves.
Competing within the group.
Yeah, competing within the group. And there is also the aspect when you're working in a team environment where, particularly that sort of environment where you're all traveling together, where no one wants to let each other down and no one wants to be seen as the weak link. But that next part where you then split the teams and go, hey, you guys get 100-meter head start and you guys,
chase.
Yeah, get cracking. That is just direct competition, right? And that's just, I don't know, if you want to put it in words, it's, hey, who wants to be the best here and who wants to be the worst? No one wants to be the worst. Everyone wants to be the best. So, of course, people are going to strive to be the best. But in that team environment, that's known as like social facilitation, where you put a group together and all of a sudden you have increased performance within the group. I mean, this study was originally done with cyclists where you would time a cyclist and they would achieve a particular time. And then you timed cyclists together and all of a sudden their times would improve just naturally. Now, this only works up to a certain point where you get into this other idea called social loafing, where if you put too many people together, particularly in a task where everyone just has to contribute a little bit for the task to work, well, people actually start realizing that there are more people here who can contribute, so I can contribute less. So it is a balance of, well, you in your scenario, you can increase performance by, adding that competition and adding members to the team, but that only works up to a certain extent where people just stop caring.
It highlights too around like the group dynamic is you can fall within the cracks. There's more people there. So, hey, I can hide. There's an element of that. And I look at like from a sports point of view, and you're in a training session and you have 5 people and you have a coach setting, hey, we're doing this and, we'll be tracking performance. In that situation, you're going to work a lot harder if you're amongst one of 5 compared to if you're amongst one of 50.
Yeah.
Because I can hide within that group. I'm going down the end and I can, they physically can't keep an eye on me.
Yeah, and this is I'm pretty sure from memory this experiment was done in a game of tug of war where you like measure the exertion of the force per member who was pulling the rope, and as you increased team membership, then the force got stronger, but it was incrementally weaker. So you add one person and all of a sudden it wasn't as strong as adding the last person, and so on and so forth. So.
Yeah. And in my mind, when I'm in that situation where you're within a larger group and you're got to get through a body of work from a physical aspect, it's not as though that, the tyrant is not able to see me now and I can get away with it, so I'm not going to contribute. It's not that at all.
Yeah.
I find it's more that I can just take it easy. Like there's not a... Yeah. From me within, I make the decision. I take the easy option. I take a shortcut to go, okay, my performance doesn't need to be as strong because there's more people.
Yeah.
And I can, and I think it is I'm hiding or I'm able to hide.
Yeah. Look, let me put words to that because like for me, I know exactly what that is for me because I've been in that situation, and usually for myself, what that is I have maybe other endeavors which I'm interested in my life. And if I can spend less energy on the thing that I don't like, which is I got to go to work, I got to make money. Like I can spend less energy here and reap the same reward. And then I can spend that energy elsewhere on separate endeavors, which I actually am interested in.
With you mentioned around when you're in that group situation and competition starts to come into it, is there an element of, hey, you want to perform and compete against the people within your group? Is that the driver around, do you think you care what people think?
Look, I've got a dark opinion on this. I think almost everything is driven by competition. Even when we say things like, I just want to improve myself and I'm competing against myself. Like I hear that and I go, well, in a world where you're just competing against yourself, like, why would you ever need to improve if you don't see anyone as competition? If no one else around you is competition, then what's the point of improving?
Just thinking from my own personal point of view, I'm not necessarily thinking I'm competing against other people. Like that's not in the fore when I'm sort of, going through that. But I imagine subconsciously it's something that's there if I really dissected that.
Well, like let's say, for example, I just want to be better. Like better than what? Better than what I am now?
Yes.
Yeah. And what does that get you?
Well, it gets me to another level. It gets me to a point where I can be more capable and be able to complete more and be more proficient in what I'm trying to do and what I have interest in doing.
Yeah. But is there any reason behind that either?
Well, that's what we're talking about, right? Like, where the hell does this come from? Like, is it a...
you see, I would call that drive, like competition.
Yeah, okay.
And I think that from an evolutionary perspective, that makes complete sense, is that without becoming a biology podcast here, you want to pass on your genetics, right? And the way you do that is by showing like potential mates that you're like the one whose genetics are great, which is why deep down, I think that the way we do things and all this sort of stuff is heavily driven by competition.
I like those sorts of scenarios, and we do that with sporting teams in regards to that walking one, just because it's a really good way to highlight just how we work and how our brains work. And if I go back to that scenario from a sporting point of view, and there's 5 people and a coach, and I'm going to get better performance out of just being in a smaller group compared to being in that larger group of 50.
Yeah.
The person who loses out in that situation is my own performance.
Yeah.
Like, I don't become as proficient or as competent in the area that I'm interested in or I'm working towards. But then secondly, the team suffers, importantly. And the tug of war analogy I think is quite interesting is that, the larger the team, the larger the group, the larger the organization, the slower it is.
Yeah.
You see it a lot.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think that's, if we go back to right at the beginning where we were talking about the Hawthorne effect, I think a part of it is that there are less eyes on the amount of people. So people feel like you said, you can slip through the cracks a little bit and just, you can be unseen in the workplace.
So moving that into a team environment, whether that be a sporting team or whether that be within an organization, if we break down those steps, there's a measuring of output is important. There's a communication of the output. There is a benchmark that is set. And then I suppose an achievement, a reward and recognition aspect of it to complete that loop.
Yeah, facilitate a little bit of competition.
Yeah, I think importantly, setting that benchmark is a critical factor. If you set that way too low, well, people are just going to do it easy, and it's just, okay, well, our benchmark is 14 minutes per kilometer. Well, we're already doing that. What's the point? But if I was to set it down at 6, well, we're not walking anymore. We're jogging. We're on the move. What that does for a scalable situation within an organization, whether that be a warehouse environment, whether that be an admin environment where you've got a situation where you've got to get through a body of work and you have too high of a benchmark on output, well, quality and safety and so on will be affected because you're just working and it's not going to be sustainable moving forward. So if you get to a point where you're saying, okay, we're going to be walking at 8-minute kilometers and we're going to be essentially power walking, well, we can't sustain that. That's not going to happen. If it is just for a short period of time, great. But can we sustain that week in, week out within a larger team?
And I think coming up with that number is the tricky part because, look, one thing that I never liked is just arbitrary numbers. So someone just throws out there for the sake of it, well, let's do this because, like, let's say a clean number, like 9 minutes per kilometer, because 9 is a nice rounded number. It's odd, which is annoying, but
how is that rounded?
Because it's not 9 minutes and 2 seconds, for example.
But it's not 10.
Yeah. Okay, let's use 10. Okay. Let's use 10. 10's an even number, which satisfies some people with OCD.
You got to have the radio. You can't have it on 24. It's got to be either 25 or 30. Yeah.
But I think that's helpful for a starting point, like throwing out that arbitrary number and saying, hey, let's do 10 minutes per kilometer. But I think it can't end there. I think it needs to adjust based on how the team are performing. And like you said earlier, if it seems too easy, well, then we push it forward. If it seems too hard, well, then we push it back. I don't think we need to land on these numbers, which are just round and clean. I think the best you can get out of a scenario is that you like workshop it scientifically and you run the statistics and do an analysis on the numbers and find out that point where you are getting the best performance without, the repercussions of burnout and things like that.
Well, look at a warehousing environment. You've got a team of pick packers. First step there is measuring the output to actually know what is happening now. So we're picking 30 products per hour. Okay, it's got to be time bound. Yeah. That's a really important factor. 30 products per hour. You're working through that. You're actually measuring it and seeing, and you will see the fluctuations between the different personalities. The thing that I always find interesting when you start this with any team is that you will have personalities that will be talking a lot about how fast they are and how competent they are. And there is a reason why they are talking and spruiking about how well they're going. It's because they actually don't
They're
do
shit.
well.
Yeah.
Yeah, their performance doesn't
Me.
Their performance doesn't match.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're talkers.
Yeah.
Whereas your quiet achievers, and it's not all quiet people, obviously,
Yeah.
but you have some quiet achievers that just get it done. And they're the ones that can let their actions speak. With measuring that, you get a good baseline of where they're at, right? And then you can go, all right, cool. Grab the quickest person. Hey, I want to see if you can sustainably work at this level. And, you might make it 40 products per hour. See how they complete that task and how sustainable it is over a period of time. Then you can make some educated decisions on what that benchmark should be. And just because you set a benchmark at a particular time doesn't mean that benchmark can't change, whether that
I
be
agree 100%.
higher or lower.
Yeah.
Because the important thing that starts to happen is innovation happens. People go, okay, well, how can we be more efficient with what we're doing? I'm going to lay out how I do things better. I'm going to have a bit more of a process. I want to create a production line here. I actually want to think about how I'm going to do it. I want to improve my skills here.
Yeah.
And that's the fantastic thing that having a benchmark does, is that it provides the opportunity for people to look outside the square to improve what they're doing.
Yeah.
Whereas if there is no benchmark, well, hey, I don't need to even look. I can just dawdle along here.
Yeah, no one's getting me in trouble.
I can dawdle the 5 kilometers. We've just done 5 kilometers. No one said how quick I've got to do it. So you're not stretching people in regards to how hard they're working, but you're stretching them from how smart they are and what they're thinking about and how creative they're being with that process. And that is actually a really cool thing that I think gets lost in the whole KPI benchmark type of thing, is that the benefit it has for people.
Yeah.
If I'm in an environment where there's no output being recorded, there's no recognition of the actual job I'm doing other than the perception that is there around how I work, well, that can be quite bad. You could, like I said, you could have people spruiking about how great they're going, and I'm working hard, but I'm not getting any recognition. It's not holding any weight with anyone. So what's the point?
Yeah. Well, and then your good people start to just resent the organization because, well, I'm not being recognized. Yeah. And what? Yeah.
So they fall to their level or they leave.
They leave. Yeah.
What's the point? I'm not being judged on what I produce.
Yep.
I'm being judged on what people think of me and the perception. So it's a really nice thing to be able to go to work and be, or be within any team and go, hey, what I've been able to produce is actually noticed and is rewarded. That's a fantastic situation.
Yeah, and there's also this sense of like contributing to a team. As social beings, it feels nice to be included in this environment, in this team, and know that you're a part of the mechanism of how everything works. Let's say, for instance, then you've set this benchmark, you've gone through the trouble of adjusting the numbers, you've come up with this sweet spot where, hey, look, we're performing at a good level, and there's no side effects to our culture and burnout and things like that. What about reviewing performance and that part that you talked about earlier? We don't have to necessarily keep it at a certain point. We can kind of adjust the numbers a little bit, or even more interesting. What if you have people who are just not performing at the level of the team? Like, what do we do there?
Yeah, well, there's an accountability piece that is very important. And if you don't have that step, it all falls over. All of those steps of measuring output, setting benchmarks, reward and recognition on the output, which is essentially accountability within that. If one of those is not there, it all falls over, and each is as important as the next. There needs to be a consistent routine accountability piece that is involved in that. So, that pick-pack environment, as an example, could be a monthly catch-up where you're going through their physical performance for that month. And that could not just be output, that could be quality, that could be how they integrate in their teamwork abilities, how much they're innovating and being a positive and creative force within the group. It could be attendance. The things that I've found in that situation is that people having that goal and having something to work towards are a lot more content. So the walking analogy, the first kilometer, really slow. Everyone is chatting. There's lots of talk.
From who?
From everyone. So, and you know, with human beings, we talk. We're not always positive, particularly if we don't have, if we're not buying into a goal, or we've just got lots of free time and we've got time to kill. It's not always going to be positive talk. Let's say it's 50-50 negative talk to positive talk. So that's going to have an impact on your culture. You're not producing what you need to produce. Then you have 50% of the talk being about negative stuff.
Yeah, I would say it's more than 50%.
Well, it depends on the group. It depends on lots of things.
There is this thing called the bad news bias, where people are more likely to discuss negative than positive topics, which is why in the news, right, we're more likely to see reports of negative things than, you know, puppies being born.
But it's a fair point. And then you get to putting in a benchmark. The level of talk just goes.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that there's not talk, and it's not the point of the exercise, but they're more focused on what they're doing. You get to the end of it all and you ask the people, when did you feel better? I actually felt better when I had a benchmark and I had a goal and I was working towards something. It's like, how can that be? You're actually expelling more energy because you're working harder, but you feel better? That dynamic within you, and you see it with going to the gym and exercising and all that sort of stuff. It's like, how can I expel energy at the gym or go for a run, but then I've got more energy for the rest of the day when I do that? Like, how does that work? And it's the same principle somehow in that, is that when people have a goal and they actually work towards something, they're happier. They feel better about it. They're achieving, they're working through it. Obviously, it's not for everyone in regards to that, but from a human being point of view, it's undeniable that people feel that way.
One of the things that you mentioned was this idea of facilitating one-on-one reviews with people and just like letting them know how they're going and setting goals and things like that. I think that works wonders in so many different ways because, like we've discussed it before, relationships and how they impact performance and things like that. Well, I think just having that one-on-one not only gives you an opportunity to talk to your employee or whoever it is and say, hey, this is how you're going. This is the goals you were setting to you. It gives you an opportunity to build that relationship with that person.
People talk about having an accountability meeting, and I don't think that's necessarily the greatest sort of phrase for it. But what I've found is the vast majority of times that's a really positive meeting. It's like, hey, this has been your performance over the last month. Thank you. It's really fantastic.
Yeah.
Gives you an opportunity to then talk about, okay, well, what do you want to do next? Like, what interests you? Are you just happy doing what you're doing now? Like, I can really see within you that there's potential to do other things, and we do have opportunities that come up. Like, does any of that interest you? It gives you that option, like what we spoke about in previous episodes, is just around, okay, someone who actually believes in me.
Yeah.
Like, by asking those questions, whether they want to or not, I actually believe in me. Like, they can see that I add benefit. That's really nice.
One of the things I used to love being on like the employee side of things, as opposed to the managerial side of things, is when 1 month, right? You go, I got this thing coming up and it's going to be all, I'm stressed about it. And then the next time they bring it up and they say, hey, how did that thing go? Something clicks in my mind. I'm going, oh my God, I was on their mind. Like, they thought about me, and you just feel special.
Well, and that environment opens itself up for a support mechanism as well, as that relationship between a team member and a leader, is that you get to a situation where you're able to, in a comfortable space, actually speak about some stuff and be more vulnerable about things instead of just a general conversation around the place. You actually get an opportunity for the team member to actually talk to you about, hey, how they're feeling about things within work environment, what might be happening in their life, if they're comfortable with sharing that sort of stuff, and vice versa, right? Is that you can have a lot more honest and more vulnerable conversations in that environment, which is a great thing to be able to do. It doesn't mean that, you know, from a team member point of view, they have to do that, but it provides that opportunity if anyone does.
And like, you know, we've spoken about the good half of this, which is someone's performing well and you get to say, hey, thank you. What about the other half where someone is not performing well?
Yeah.
You know, how would you deal with that while still trying to establish that relationship?
Well, that structure's there, right? And if you've got that set, so you will find that you'll have performers that just keep hitting what they should be hitting, right? And they self-manage themselves, so to speak. You'll have others that environment is needed for them to actually proactively be managed. So, I know that I'm going to be catching up at the end of the month to go through my performance. I'm going to make sure that it's good, right? I'll do it because I know this is happening. Then there's that other group that you're talking about is that, hey, sometimes they're just not capable. They don't actually want to.
Yeah.
And then that's a decision for that organization or team to make, is that, okay, well, look, this is where you've been at, and there's no need to be rude or mean about it, but it's just like, this is where you're at. Well, this is where we need you to be. What training, what support can we provide to help you along?
Yeah.
This is where we do need to get to. You don't want to be having conversations like, this is crap and you're crap and, da-da-da.
Yeah.
Why aren't you doing this? Everyone else can do it. Like that's just rude.
Yeah.
It's not, having that conversation, it opens it up. It's like, I just don't know how to do this. It's like, that's cool. We can help you with that. We can get to that point. But for others, there's people that just want to go and tell everyone how good they are and go and find a spot to, hide for a couple of hours. And that's what they're about. And then, you get to HR side of things where you can start putting in performance plans and you can start then go to formal warnings and things like that if you get to that point. But I think importantly, if you've got that structure in place, people know when they come on board, this is the environment, this is the expectation.
One thing that I actually found worked really good in this space was actually techniques which are like commonly used in persuasion. And the thing that I used to like doing is like putting a little bit of fear into people, but then giving them the answer to alleviate the fear. And this has been shown to work in like in smoking campaigns, right? Like you're most likely to persuade someone to quit smoking if you
show a manky toe,
show them the manky toe, but then also show them how to avoid the manky toe. Like these are the steps you've got to do. And completely different ideas. Like one, you're trying to get someone to quit, and one, you're trying to improve someone's performance.
Carrot and a stick.
But I found it works really well. You don't completely just overload with fear, because that works in the opposite direction. But you go, hey, look, here's the consequences of your performance. Here's what it does for us, and here's where it could potentially lead for you. Now, here's how you can fix it. It's like, all we've got to do is hit this, and here's how we can do it. So
the honesty aspect of just fortune telling the future, right? In the fact is like, hey, if we continue down this path, this is where we're going to get to. We don't want that to happen. We actually want to get to this, and we see that you have potential, and we want to help and support to get you to that point. Laying that out in an honest way, but a respectful way is cool, instead of like, if you don't do this within a week, you're gone. Like,
and that's the fear. That's the fear aspect of it, which has been shown by itself to not be effective. Like you need to help people out.
You can still get your point across and be respectful and have a good relationship with someone. And that can be difficult, and it can be frustrating if you've got someone within the team that you're leading that isn't performing. It's like, how hard is it? There's other people that can do it. Like, why aren't they getting it done?
Yeah.
What is this? They've done it before. What is it now? Why can't they do it now? They actually might have something monumental going on in their personal lives.
It's very common as well, actually.
Yeah, their focus is not on this, because this is not important to them in the scheme of things, to their life, when they have this tragedy or whatever's going on in their personal life.
And look, that's another dangerous thing that can show up in relationships and performance, which is you give someone this idea that you only like them because of their performance. And then when they start performing bad, you're like, well, I'm not interested in you anymore.
Yeah.
Which is more of a dangerous road to step. Like, I think there's that important balance of realizing when someone is straying off the path, and then, keeping that relationship intact and going, hey, look, we still have this good relationship, but for the sake of the organization, the performance isn't there. And like, we need to get that back on track for your sake.
Other ways too, from an accountability point of view, and it's probably, it is obviously a lot more reward and recognition, and that's a form of accountability. But a nice thing that I used to do with some team that I were reporting through to someone who was reporting to me, I would make an effort if there was, from an output or a quality point of view, or they've produced something, a new innovation that helps people, is to obviously go and thank them for that.
Yeah.
And it could be their output on a particular day was really good, or that they've been working hard to get to a certain point and they achieve that goal. The power of just going up one-on-one, casually, hey, Scotty, I just noticed this. I know you've been working hard.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Like, good on you. Like, that goes a long way.
100%.
In group settings, you know, calling out performance that you want to encourage is a great thing. You know, the individual may not like that. They may feel embarrassed. But, you know, like, there is that situation where it's like, hey, I don't want to be called out in front of the group for some performance. Like, I want to stay, you know, I don't like that. I don't like being in the spotlight. That's fine. You can get that. But the benefit for the team is that, hey, you get to reward that person. Yeah. And in the end, if it might be a little bit uncomfortable at the start, it's the right thing to do.
Yeah,
is to call out that performance in front of their peers to say, hey, I just want to thank da-da-da.
And at the end of the day, regardless of, hey, I don't want to do that, that person's still going to feel good, whether that's in the moment or reflecting on it later.
Measuring output can be a hard one. Like, I know you've had plenty of experience with this. It can be hard to, depending upon the technology within an organization.
Yeah. The hard part for me is knowing what sort of stats that you're measuring are meaningful or not. Because you could measure something which is a piece of maybe a task that you're doing, but it's meaningless to overall objectives. The hard part is determining, well, what do I need to measure which is meaningful?
It's going to depend on what the different team is going through and what you want to look at. But if you broke it down to, you know, output and quality, okay, just as a simple form. And I know for sporting teams that might be, there's a lot more that goes into it. But then, like, effort statistics and how sporting teams can actually track that. Like rugby league, third man in a tackle, someone who's making that decision to actually get involved in a tackle when there's two other people just to help the team instead of just running back and taking the easy option, is an effort type statistic that can be measured. But it depends on the maturity of the team. You know, you might be in a situation where you can't get your players to get the correct amount of runs that you need, or the correct amount of tackles, or, hey, from a quality point of view, how many missed tackles that they've got, or how many ineffective tackles where a player has actually found their front and got up and instead of, you know, being put on their back, or a slower play the ball. There's like all those different things that go into it. The important thing with it as well is like recognizing what is going to be beneficial to produce the results that you're after within the team.
Yeah. And this is what I wanted to discuss about this whole measuring and statistics, and what statistics are meaningful and which aren't, because you can be put in that environment, right? And let's go back to the warehouse where someone on paper has a higher pick rate of products than another person. But then you look at other metrics and you go, well, this person actually picked more in the day, but this person seemed to have picked faster. And you can analyze that further and go, oh, well, why is that? Oh, because this person's like put down toilet breaks in between, and they've done this and they've done this. And whereas this person's just gone and measured from here to here, I've just been picking and I've done this amount of picks. So yeah, the annoying thing about statistics and measuring data in general is not just looking at the numbers and going, okay, this is an objective measure where this number is higher than this one, but it's looking at the meaning behind and the context of what those numbers mean. Otherwise, you can just fall into the trap where everyone's going to do, if they know that their lines per hour is what's being watched, they're going to optimize their work routine so that their lines per hour looks the highest, but not necessarily their output for the organization.
Yeah, well, there's two aspects to it. And, you know, again, it gets back to that principle from the walking scenario around, okay, well, what are you actually wanting, and what's the set goal? What's the benchmark? You know, if you just give them the benchmark of the output, and then there's the quality, and then there's the different things, but it's over a point of time. So the spruikers, right? People who say, oh, you know, I'm the best at this and I'm so fast and that. What you find with those people is they actually are quite fast. Not for the whole day, though. They're only fast for a small fraction.
Yep.
So, hey, I'm able to pick at 100 products an hour. Okay, great. But you only did that for an hour.
Yeah.
And then over the course of the day, your output is only 200 actual products being picked, compared to someone who is consistent in hitting 50 per hour across the 8 hours and has 400 actual products picked. And you know which one that you want to go for, right? So there's that time bound aspect. But then also too, I'm super fast. Yeah, they are. They're doing 100 picks per hour, but their quality is disgusting.
Yeah, absolutely.
Their presentation of the product and how the customer will receive it is no good. Their actual accuracy in what they're picking and the quantities that they're picking is not good.
Yep.
So it depends on, I suppose,
100%.
the maturity of where you're at in a particular thing.
Yeah.
From an admin point of view, okay, well, I've got so many documents that I need to produce. Okay, great. You can do 100 in a day. Fantastic. Yeah, but 95 of them have got errors and need to be reworked. Like, what's the point? So yeah, I think there's a quality aspect in that works off output, but then also to the time bound. But measuring that data can be really tough. Like, there's been situations where started with a piece of paper and people actually had to write down what they're completing. Now that has so many holes in it.
And
like,
corruption.
People can cheat.
100%.
You can cheat that, but it's a starting point. You don't have to build this amazing piece of technology and software so you can measure it and it's all scanned and it's this and that. Yes, in a year's time, that could be the evolution of it all. But right now, we just need to start.
Yeah.
We need the focus to be on the output. Yes, you are going to have people that are going to try and cheat the system, but you're going to have that anywhere. And that's a big thing when you're measuring output, is like whenever there's measurement of output and competition, you know, you look at the Olympics, what happens? People are on steroids. Someone's trying to cheat.
Always.
Yeah, and trying to take the easy option because they're driven at any cost to actually win.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah. So that's something that's going to pop up.
Yep, absolutely.
From a measuring of output, you start small, and you could be like, okay, within a warehouse environment, it could be just carton picks that you do first, and then you might do pallet picks, and then you might do forklift unload and load, might then be inventory counting. But you don't have to do it all in one shot. Like,
yeah, and I think it's dangerous too, because someone might get overwhelmed by, well, what I've got to keep track of and like what metrics I'm supposed to be aiming for here.
And if you're taking a culture from not having any of that and no focus on output at all, the change management piece there,
it's going to be a riot.
Incrementally, you know, you come in on a Monday and it's like, okay.
Yeah. Things are going to be different around here.
There's going to be some mutinies going on.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I think that's an important thing, because that measuring of output can be quite daunting to break it down. Like any big task that you've got, break it down, and it's important that you spend the time on it. The other one too, with the accountability that we probably missed, is just around the proactive use of time. So you're leading a team, you have 10 pick packers in your team. Well, you need to have each month 10 one-on-one catch-ups with those. So there's 5 hours worth of work. Let's say you do 30 minutes, right? For you can chat, so it's probably going to be 60. But
4 hours to warm up.
So let's say 5 hours. That's a sink of time. What's the impact of that time? Well, I lose it, but what do I get for that investment of time? And if you did the math and figured out, okay, well, and you sort of find anywhere from like 25% to 50% improvement in output when you're actually measuring their output and seeing what they're producing. If you looked at it in that aspect, okay, well, let's just say you improve things just a small bit. You went from each of those teams producing 50 picks per hour. So over the course of the 10 of them, there's 500 picks per hour. Okay, so if I then increase that just by 10%, okay, so we get to 550. So essentially, I've got an extra person now on my team, all by putting in that time for those meetings, okay? So 5 hours per month to get one extra person per month.
It's worth it.
I think so.
If your math is correct.
Yeah. Well, like 10% is not a large increase. Like I've seen increases up to 50%.
Yeah.
And it does depend, but let's just say, just for the ease of math, and it is a smaller percentage, it is 10%. Yeah. But, you know, you look at the difference there is like, okay, 5 hours compared to an extra person for a whole month. You know, what's 40 by 5? What's that? That's 200.
Yep.
So 200 hours from a 5-hour investment. Let's double that, because you're sitting down. There's 2 of you sitting down. So there's a 10-hour investment from the team. 10 hours gets you to 200. Even if it's 5% increase, you know, you're still...
So unless you're afraid of spending that extra 5 hours, well, then you're just better off hiring the other person.
Well, the other... and you look at the flip side is that, okay, we can't produce enough. We need more. Okay, we need more people. Well, let's get more people in. Fantastic. Let's get more people in. We're not efficient, but let's just keep adding labor at it.
Yeah.
And then all your facilities start to get some strain. Your amenities get some strain. You need more toilets, lunchrooms. You haven't got enough car parking spaces. You need to start scheduling breaks so people can actually use facilities. Like, there's all these things that go into it. But hey, we won't make the resources efficient that we have and provide a better environment for people and actually, reward them for their output.
In that scenario, you're just committing to the Band-Aid fix where, maybe as a manager, you're overwhelmed yourself and you think, well, I can just throw more labor at this and it's going to work out.
Well, and maybe that's your only option too, right? But, whether that's because that's where that culture is and that's where the environment is, or hey, you just don't have the time to be able to get to that point in the short term. So probably in summary, like talking about the benefits for the team organization, you look at a few things. A more efficient labor force, you reduce the amount of culture related issues that you're going to have pop up. The other added benefit from a leader's point of view is around, hey, you don't care if someone is taking long toilet breaks or having a chat. You actually want to encourage them having a chat and building relations with the team, as long as they're able to hit their performance markers.
Yeah.
And if someone can do that, fantastic. Like you go and have a chat for half an hour. I don't have an issue with that. You're actually producing at the level that we expect, and good on you.
And that
you can
feeling of autonomy is like very powerful for people as well, knowing that it contributes to why they want to come to work. Like, I love this organization because I can do what's required of me and I can still do the other things which I enjoy.
That micromanagement aspect goes away. You do not have to, hey, stop talking. Hey, stop doing this. Hey, why have you been there for this amount of time? And do you really want to actually waste your time with those type of conversations, or proactively set up an environment and some boundaries so people can actually just manage themselves in that regard? We spoke about the reduced stress on amenities and just the Band-Aid fix of throwing extra labor at it, making a more efficient labor force, and actually giving time to a smaller amount of people than having a larger amount that needs more leaders, that becomes bloated, and you got more overhead costs, that then there's more pressure for you to produce more. And how do we get more sales? How do we get more work in? When you can be more efficient with what you got, it is certainly a better way to look at it. A better quality of team, the different personalities you're going to attract, someone who is a little bit more driven, someone who is a little bit more keen to produce and look at outcomes than someone who is just more interested in doing the least amount to get the most amount they can get. And probably you could look at that in an aspect of, you have a responsibility as a leader to provide that environment to all the other team that have to work with that person as well.
Absolutely.
I've been in that situation before, and you mentioned it earlier. It's just like, you end up just falling to their level or you leave. It's just like, it's not a great spot to be in.
And there's actually an interesting study done in IO psychology where it showed that like the bad apple component, like the one bad apple can actually spoil the team. It's something that we've discussed already, which is that aspect of, well, if that person's getting away with it and I'm doing all this hard work and it can just go like that, well, then what's the point?
Why should I bother? Why should I be carrying someone else? The other benefit, not only to an organization, but also the team, is that being able to labor plan better. So if you actually have an understanding of how much your resources are able to produce across a certain amount of time, you're able to plan what you're able to do.
Exactly.
So you can build your labor planning around the key of just understanding what you're able to produce. And it's just a basic, like, there's been plenty of situations where I've been involved where sales teams are like, hey, when are we going to get this order? It's supposed to be this, it's supposed to be that. And then you got the operations team going, we're behind with this. Well, when's it going to be ready? I don't know. Like, we've got Johnny off sick, and we've got Barry who's, injured. What do you want me to do? You get into that really average position. There's nothing worse than, okay, that scenario where I've got some good personal standards. I work to a good level, but I'm carrying other team members that aren't actually doing what they need to be doing. Then we get to Friday, and then you have your manager come out and say, hey, guys, we're not able to get through everything that we're supposed to get through. So I need people to work overtime. So, great.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Just what I want to do. I want to do more work. And you put that person in such an average spot in the fact that, hey, they may need the money, they may want to, but then that sacrifices their family time, their work-life balance.
Yeah, which you can get away with in the short term, but if that's sustained over a period, it's
it's not nice.
Just ask my wife.
The benefits for the team get overlooked all the time. You're implementing benchmarks, you're implementing KPIs, there's a focus on performance. Oh, that's only for a business to gain from. It's not, right?
Look, we've talked a lot about improving productivity, and I think there's a lot of good points. And I think there's a lot of points that we've also missed, but given the amount of time we have, I think we've done a majority of the work. Anything else, Dan?
No, all good. Appreciate
good?
it, Scotty.
Yeah, maybe I'll call in sick next time. All right. Bye.
Hey, performance review.
Yeah.
See ya.